Cleverdix podcast. In this podcast, we're talking to Peter Gibbs. Peter Gibbs is a swimmer from Nelson who's been around for a while, which isn't really strange because he's actually in his 70s now. Peter's been writing about swimming and been involved in swimming for ages now. He's done his work with triathlons and also organizing a number of memorable swim adventures / holidays in the around the Nelson area. We talk about what he puts into swimming, but also what he gets out from swimming as well. This was a great chat with a great person. I think you're going to love this one. Well, welcome to another Cleverdix podcast. In this podcast, we're talking to Peter Gibbs. Welcome, Peter.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, cool. So what we normally do, just to start off with, is just ask people just to give us their swim story. So what got you into swimming, what keeps you swimming, and then we can start diving down into some of the interesting things that you've done and organized.
All right. Well, like so many, I started as a teenager, just getting into a swim squad when I was 13 or something, and learning to swim. This was in Whangarei at Whangarei Boys High School, and then when I was 17, I left school and I stopped swimming, and that was pretty well the end of the story as far as I was concerned. In those
That
days,
was 3 or 4 years ago, Peter, right? When you left school?
I left school in 1965.
Okay, cool.
So then when I was in my early 30s, I started to get a bit fat, and so I took up running and found I really enjoyed that. Mainly the competitive business, because I got bored with running, but I really liked the competition. And then, to my amazement, I saw a TV program about triathlon, and I couldn't believe that people were doing that. This was an Ironman triathlon. In fact, it was Nice, which is probably a little short of full Ironman, but I just couldn't believe it. I thought, that's bloody amazing that people could do all that. And then, lo and behold, I got talking to a guy called Greg Frayne, who was an Olympic cyclist and lived here in Nelson. And we talked around the business and thought, well, we could do triathlon here. So we started up a triathlon club. I got back into swimming. In fact, I'd already got back into swimming. Gosh, this is a roundabout story. A guy in about 1985, so 40 years ago, called Peter Owen, who owns a local company, had put an ad in the paper saying he's interested in sea swimming and who'd like to join him. So 6 of us turned up at Tahuna Beach and swam. And then this guy, Peter Owen, started a regular swim series a year or 2 later. I'm a bit vague about the details now. But so I got into swimming. Then I met up with Greg Frayne, who was had been an Olympic cyclist, as I said, but had just started doing triathlon, and we formed with other people a club, and just basically got into doing triathlons. Sea swims in Nelson became a weekly affair over the summer, and Peter Owen ran them for 20 years, and then he asked me to run them, which I did. I put them under the umbrella of the triathlon club because then we could get insurance and stuff, and so that's how it went. I carried on doing triathlons till I was about 70, which is 7 years ago, and now I just swim. And then I'm rambling on a bit. I think I ran the swims here in Nelson for 5 or 6 years, and then kind of stepped back a bit. But I've continued to write about them for a site you may know, Sports Hub, for many years, and that was about it until turned out I was a single man at about the age of 72, and I met this. You'll know the Ocean Swim Series that used to be run by Scott Rice. He started a swim in Nelson, and the Big Tahuna. So he ran it for 3 years, and on the third of those years, I was organising the local ground crew, setting up tents and all that. And I was walking along the beach, chatting up people and saying, how you doing? Are you having a good time? Can we help? And so on and so on and so on. And I ran into this woman. And 6 months later, I started traveling up to Auckland to visit her. And while I was up there, a member of the Koei Kippers, and you will know about them, said to me, has anybody ever organised a swim the length of Abel Tasman National Park? And I said, well, they have, as a matter of fact, but it was only a very small crew 4 or 5 years ago, but it should be possible. So I set out and organised a swim the length of Abel Tasman National Park over 4 days. I'd been swimming a little bit while I was on my romantic visits to Auckland, also with the fur seals. And en masse, they decided they were all going to come. And before we knew it, we had 60 people swimming the length of Abel Tasman over 4 days. But it was a hell of an exercise, and it was really expensive to hire boats. So we didn't do it the following year, but it was about, the first one must have been in 2021. We didn't do it in 22. 23, some friends here with a yacht said we could take 20 people and do it again. So we did. 24, I said, it's really hard to organise Abel Tasman because you have to shift accommodation, and that's a mess every day. Why don't we base ourselves somewhere in the Marlborough Sounds and swim there? So Kathy and I, by now, we'd been married for a few years, and she lives down here, of course. We walked into a place called Mistletoe Bay in Queen Charlotte Sound and checked out the accommodation and thought, we could do this. So this is 2024. We got boats from two friends in Nelson, and in fact, one was permanently anchored in Waikawa in the Marlborough Sounds. The other one sailed around from Nelson, so that's up Tasman Bay and through French Pass and into Cook Strait and down Queen Charlotte Sound. Quite a long 2-day trip. Anyway, we met up at Anakiwa outside of Outward Bound with 40 swimmers, and they just jumped in the water there and then and swam 2 stages of 4 kilometres each into Mistletoe Bay. And then for the next 2 days, we swam 3 stages, each of about 4K, and just kept moving out and out and out through the Sounds. And on the last day, we packed our bags and crossed over to the other side of Queen Charlotte to the road that goes between Havelock and Picton, and swam down that shore and finished up back at Anakiwa. That was all good. So we did it again this year, 2025, and that was all good. By now, we've got quite a group of friends, including Marika, who I think put you onto me.
Yes.
Marika's done all 4 of the trips, both Abel Tasmans, both Queen Charlottes, and there's quite a group of people from Auckland and Nelson, of course, and all over who come on our trips. This recent one in March, we had people from Dunedin, Christchurch, Nelson and Auckland, not from Wellington. We had some from Wellington our first trip. But anyway, that's all by the by. And I said, well, we're never doing it again because we rely on so much volunteers to do all the catering and the cooking. And so we keep them minimal price, cut price, really. I think we charged $600 for last year's, for everything. That's all the food, all the beer you can drink, all the wine,
no wonder Marika keeps going back. Now I understand it. Okay.
We put it up to $700 this year, but some of the crew were a bit enthusiastic, and we ran out of beer after 2 nights out of 3. Anyway, the trips are not all about drinking beer, but you no doubt understand that after swimming 12K and getting highly, people just can't stop talking when they finish, and they get highly excited, and that's all kind of part of the fun of it. Anyway, as soon as we got back from this year's trip in March, I started thinking, well, I don't want to do it again like that. We can't rely on so much volunteer help because the boat people, these people that bring these whopping great yachts around from Nelson and so on, they only charge us costs, so it's minimal. And that's, all those reasons why we can keep it so cheap. Anyway, once upon a time in the outer sounds out towards Ship Cove, which is famous for Captain Cook anchoring up and refueling his boats and his sailors and so on. Just around the corner from there is Resolution Bay, and there's a bunch of old cottages there. And we started having a look at their website, and then we realized that they actually would cater and cook meals. And so 4 days after we had finished the last trip, this year's trip, Kathy and I and a couple of other friends who look after the catering went out there, and we did a couple of days walking on the Queen Charlotte track, and we stayed at Resolution Bay and got them to cook our dinner for us and talk to them, with the result that we came up with a scheme to do another trip, but this time from Ship Cove, round into Resolution Bay and then round into Endeavour Inlet. And there's lots of swimming to be had around there. And there we are. We advertised it to a limited number of people and said, well, the first 40 people who paid the deposit are in. I'm sending out a bank account at 7 o'clock. Well, I sent it out at about 5 to 7, and by 2 minutes past 7, we had 55 people paid up. Well, we only had room for 4. So anyway, awesome. There we are. We're kind of faced with another trip and a lot of disappointed people, and we're trying to think of ways that we might be able to take more people, but I don't know how we can. But anyway, there's the abbreviated version of how we came to be organising these trips.
Well, I can tell you, I've only ever heard amazing things about them. So it's definitely not all about the beer. In fact, nobody's spoken to me about the beer. It's been all about the swimming and how amazing it is to swim in that area. Yep. And how well everybody's looked after, and the food and the laughter and the camaraderie it's become a little bit legendary here in Auckland. So I'm not surprised you sold out, Peter, after 2 minutes.
We've got more people from Auckland this year. The North Shore group, they call themselves the Mocha group. That's MOCHA, and they're based at Takapuna. And there's Marika as well, whose partner Warwick does kayak support for us. Then we've got a few of the First Eels from the other side coming back this year as well. So, we have a good Auckland representation, and we're picking up more people from Dunedin too. It's funny, we get little pockets of people, and they all come with their friends, and that's what happens. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, so it definitely sounds like it's a word of mouth thing. And I really like the what you're saying about sort of kind of almost building a community, but coming from the whole country.
Yeah, it's good. We usually have a wrap up affair of some sort, and this year a lot of the Nelson guys decided they were all going to go up and do the banana boat swim at the Mount. And that was going to be their wrap-up for the season. And they went up there and, lo and behold, met up with a whole lot of the Auckland swimmers. And, it was as if they were all part of the community. And that worked really well. We didn't go up there because Kathy and I now like to go on long walks every winter. So we're doing a several 100-kilometre walk in Italy in a couple of weeks' time.
Nice.
So, but meantime, back in Nelson, people are still plunging into the sea. The temperature's dropping steadily, but that's a phenomenon, obviously, all over the country, of people who swim all year round now, and without wetsuits and God knows what. I don't know how they do it.
Which walk are you doing in Italy? Is it by any chance down the Amalfi Coast?
No, we're doing it. Well, just to put this into perspective, before I met Kathy on the beach in Nelson, I'd walked the Camino in Spain on my own, and I said, we need to do this. Kath's Canadian and likes to see her mother every year because her mother's getting on for 100 now, and so we've taken to going to Canada and visiting the family So the first year we walked the Camino again, and then the following year we walked the Northern Camino, which is along the coastline of northern Spain. And then last year, or year before last, we walked the British coast. Oh, well, last year we walked the coast to coast in Britain from the Irish Sea to the North Sea. And this year we're doing a section of the Via Francigena, I think you pronounce it. That's a pilgrimage from Canterbury to Rome of 2,000 kilometres, but we're only doing the last 400, starting somewhere in Tuscany and walking down to Rome. So, yeah, that's our plan for this year.
Very cool.
Wow.
Very cool.
That's super impressive.
Yeah, it's great.
So, Peter, when you, if I just sort of nudge us back a little bit towards the swimming, when you did get back into swimming, was it in the pool, or was it in the ocean, or was it specifically to do an Ironman or something along those lines?
No, I started out just doing odd events, and people didn't really swim in the mid-'80s. It wasn't a regular thing for people to go bolting down to the sea all the time. So I swam in a pool, and at first on my own, but I later joined a squad. In those days, the swim squads were all teenagers, and so I was swimming with all these teenagers. But as time went by, and we started having, a Thursday night series, and we had expanded swim squads with adults and so on, but it was pretty well all in the pool. It's only in recent years, I think, that we've started to meet up with bunches of other people and swim in the sea, probably the last 7 or 8 years, perhaps. But I still, Kathy and I both still swim with a squad 3 or 4 days a week, at least in the winter. It used to be all year round, but the numbers have dwindled so much in the summer that we swim in the sea in the summer now and in the pool in the winter. So,
Yeah, we've kind of almost got the opposite challenge with our swim squad. Is somebody said that we needed to reduce the average age of the swim squad and get somebody under 70 into it.
Yeah, I can understand.
We'd like to have a couple of youngsters come along and start rocking us up a bit.
Yeah. I think our group, that's probably only me and there's about 3 of us in our 70s, I guess, all through the 3 lanes that we occupy. So yeah, but most of them are in their 60s or 50s. There's not. Well, there are some younger swimmers, but not that many.
Oh, I love the way that he called a 60-year-old a younger swimmer. Oh, I'm loving this chat, Peter.
Yeah.
So maybe an obvious question, but obviously, I always reference myself to Roger Salisbury, right, from the First Seals, and I always joke and say, when I'm big, I want to be like Roger, right? What do you sort of contribute towards that success of staying swimming and staying healthy as you get older and move into your 70s? Like what's been the reason that you contribute to keep moving and keep swimming?
Well, I have done a lot of writing about sports over the years. I worked for a newspaper for quite a long time, and for 15 years I had a column called The Fitness Zone, where I would, and in those days I was full-on triathlon, and so there was always a bike race or a running race or a swim or some other form of activity to write about. And I think having to write about something made me go and do things, because I had to have something to write about. I always said through these columns and other writing that I've done that the most important thing in my life just about was joining a swim squad when I was 13, because if it hadn't have been for that, I wouldn't have had the ability to swim. I know people pick up swimming when they're older, but I know it's much harder for them. And at the culmination of triathlon, and I had my most successful and hard training years between 60 and 70 for triathlon, and I just feel that I'm so well and so healthy because of that lifelong habit, and also that a lot of my friendships have come, from that involvement as well, and a lot of my motivation for life. So it's kind of a no-brainer that we can't give up. Well, especially since now that I'm married to a swimmer, and she loves going to the pool, and she loves beating me in races as much as I love beating her. So it's inconceivable that we would give it up, really.
Clever Dicks is New Zealand's largest swim-focused podcast, and our team at Swimscapes is proud to be their official partner with all things swimming. Swimscapes offers boat piloting and safety for solo marathon swims, as well as various packages including marathon relay swims, swim camps, and swim adventure holidays. Swimscapes is also a facilitator of the Auckland Triple Crown, coming soon. Proudly brought to you by Swimscape.
Lately, we've been trying to do a bit more walking, but life's got really busy. We were trying to walk to train for our long walk, but we don't need to swim right now for any reason, but we do. We go to the pool, like we were there yesterday morning, Friday morning, because we knew that was the morning that people would go off and have coffee, and we wanted to catch up with our friends again. So,
Yes.
it's all those things are interrelated, and I think we'll swim till we die. One of our very good friends, well, just to go back to Roger Soulsby, he's an inspirational figure. He was on our first Abel Tasman trip too, actually, Roger, one of those. But an even older friend, Derek Eaton, he used to be the Bishop of Nelson, and he has done something like 70 banana boat ocean swims, and he's seldom been beaten. He still gets up there and wins the 80-plus age group in all the swims. And he married us. We said to him, Derek, will you marry us? And not the normal sort of a question you put to a bloke, but he did.
That's cool.
Yeah, so, and that's just to illustrate the kind of interconnectedness of our friends and the things that we do, and, the reasons that we just keep on exercising and trying to be fit.
I thoroughly agree. I think that a lot of swim groups are actually really coffee groups that just all agree to swim before the coffee.
They are. Down at the beach in Nelson, Tahuna Beach, there's a large contingent of people who swim there all year round. And as I said, we don't, but we do in the summer. And on Saturday mornings in the summer, there can be 60 or 70 people swimming off Tahuna Beach. Some will start at 6:30, 6:45, 7, 7:30, but they'll pretty well all pass through the same cafe just across the street from the beach. So you can go there anytime between 8 and 10 on a Saturday morning, and there might be 20 or 30 swimmers all shouting at each other across the coffee cups. So, yeah, it's you're right. It's a very sociable thing. It's good for the coffee industry too.
It is, yeah. Do you use any equipment when you're in the pool, like paddles or snorkels or anything like that to sort of assist your technique?
Sometimes we on a Saturday, in the winter on a Saturday, we have a coach. Monday, Wednesday and Friday we don't, but the same coach writes us a program, and he will often put in a pool buoy or paddles or something. I have a snorkel, which I sometimes use. I must say I always wear buoyancy shorts, because now that I'm fat and old, my bum seems to sink in the water. And since I discovered them, I've swum much better in the pool. So, yeah, I use them all the time. But basically, I like swimming because you just get in the water and off you go, Yeah. Pair of goggles.
The buoyancy shorts are super cool. They're very handy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
I
a
love
big
them.
fan.
Oh, I was just going to say, so looking forward, now that Dan Feist has taken over the banana boats,
Yep.
he's returned at our insistence, returned to Nelson. So we had a big tahuna last summer, and there's one on the cards for mid-November this year. So I guess that's our next chance to lure people down to Nelson and get a mass participation. And another thing that we're planning on doing, when we had to disappoint a lot of people for our next year's trip in the Marlborough Sounds, we had quite a large group of slower swimmers who really wanted to be part of it. And I'd asked a series of questions, and one was, how fast do you think, just cruising, would you swim a kilometre? And we had replies from 15 minutes up to half an hour. Well, if somebody in a half an hour is swimming a kilometre and somebody else is swimming 2 kilometres, it doesn't take very long for the field to get stretched to dangerous levels, really. And for that reason, actually, we turned a few people down. We said, well, we just don't have the safety resources to do that. So what I said instead was, well, Kathy and I have got a batch now at Anakiwa, and in the Anakiwa kind of bay, there are 3 jetties, and if you swim from one to the other to the third and then back to where you started, it's a circuit of 3 kilometres. So we've decided to institute a more or less free swim for anybody who wants to turn up. We're calling it the Tiramoana Triangle. And I think there's every sign that we'll have 100 or more people turning up already, and we haven't mentioned it to anybody yet. So, that's just a fun. It's easy to organise things like that in a contained space, and and the safety is reasonably well. I have to say that the work in putting the safety together is reasonably minimal, and fortunately, in the Marlborough Sounds, the Marlborough Harbour Master is pretty loose about. Well, not loose. I wouldn't say he's lax, but realistic. When you say, "Oh, I want to do a swim," and I'm just telling you about it. He doesn't say, well, you have to have a permit and go to the council. He says, well, you're not actually doing anything that you're not allowed to do. Swimming in the sea is not an illegal activity. So thanks for letting me know. I hope you have a good time. And that's quite refreshing. I like
that
swimming.
That is super refreshing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's definitely not how they operate in Auckland. I can
no, and not in Nelson either, really. Things we've done there. The harbour masters, because we deal with 2 harbour masters here in Nelson, one attached to the Tasman District Council and one to Nelson City, and they're accommodating and helpful, but you still have to fill in forms and submit safety plans and so on. Well, we have a safety plan, but it's common sense. You don't have to keep reading it. You know what you've got to do.
Yes, correct.
And that's that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to ask, Peter, for your Marlborough Sound trip, what does the safety measures look like there? You mentioned you had a couple of kayakers. Obviously, you've got the boat.
Yeah.
Do your swimmers use safety tow floats, for example?
Yeah. We make them compulsory.
Cool.
So we've had 3 inflatables. And 2 kayaks and the 2 bigger boats. In fact, we had 3 kayaks as well this year. Next year, we're employing a mid-range boat as well as the 2. Well, one's a yacht and one's a launch, but we can put 25 people on each of those. So at the end of every stage, we get people on board and we give them tea and coffee and so on and so on and so on. But we've also got another boat that'll hold about 8 people that we're taking this year. And what we're going to do, we've got about 5 people who we've classed as slower swimmers. We're going to take them a kilometre or so down the track for each stage next year and throw them in ahead of everybody else so that rather than expanding, the field compresses and, just so we can keep a tighter watch on things. But so we'll have 3 smaller motorized boats, 2 inflatables and this other one, the 2 bigger boats, and probably 3 kayaks this year, and tow floats for everybody, of course.
That's very cool. So one of the things Marika said when she came back, that there can be quite a lot of jellyfish, not the stinging kind, but is that very common?
Yeah, down the Sounds it is. It can be like swimming over a bloody foam rubber mattress sometimes. It's just creepy. But you come out with jellyfish under your fingernails. It's they're just, somebody described them as breast implants, which is a bit sexist, I must say. It's like you've got a cat with no skin floating in the water, and you plunge your hand into it, and it's all kind of spongy, and it's a bit creepy. But you come across shoals of them. You'll swim along, and then suddenly you'll be in the thick of them. I swim with a wetsuit, and I find it creepy. But the people like Marika who swim without wetsuits, fortunately they don't sting, so that's a good thing. But swimming in the sea, you do get sea lice and other things. On one of our Abel Tasman swims, we had 2 people had to go to hospital with something like, I don't know what they were, little eggs that got into their eyes of jellyfish or something. I didn't quite understand what it was, but a couple of people have very badly affected eyes, and we had to get the harbour master to bail them out, and they had to go to hospital. So that only happened on one swim and on one day, so I don't know what that was. So there's unknown things out in the sea, things you don't see and you'd rather not see, and things you don't see which find you anyway. That's part of the
No, I thought you were going to tell me that everyone goes down there because of all the dolphins or something like that, because that will get everyone down there, eh?
That would be lovely. We do have dolphins around. We've never had them when we're swimming, and we also have orca coming as far down as Anakiba, where our batch is. We've never encountered them swimming either, but they're around, and they come and clean out the stingrays every year or 2. So, yeah. We have swum with them in the years that I was organising the Thursday night series in Nelson. We had a couple of occasions. One in particular, the swim started at 6, and at 5 when I went down there was a pod of 6 orca prowling around the harbour in Nelson, and one of them swam right across the ramp right in front of us. That was pretty impressive. It's like having a bloody bus just bursting through the water at your feet. Anyway, we had a couple of policemen who were swimming in those days. In fact, one of them was the father of a girl who went on to swim Cook Strait the following year, or had just swum Cook Strait, that's right. So he got on the phone to Philip Rush and said, so what's the story about these orca? Should we swim or should we cancel? And he advised us that it was going to be safe, and I felt good that a policeman had advised us that, and so had Philip Rush. And so we did the swim anyway, and nobody got eaten. So, I mean, the prevailing wisdom is that, you're okay with orca, but it's still pretty scary when you see them out there.
Yeah, they're hunters, right?
Yeah. If you just don't look like a stingray, and you'll be okay, I think.
Yeah. I haven't seen a 90-kilogram stingray, so it should be fun.
No. But we have had other occasions in the Nelson Harbour where they've come around while we're swimming. And as swimmers, we don't see them. We just wonder why all the boats are whizzing up and down so quickly alongside us. But I mean, once every 5 or 6 years, it's not a regular occurrence.
If I can chat a little bit about some of your writing and your interviews that you've done, have you, who's the most sort of interesting character triathlon / swimming wise that you've interviewed?
Hell, I don't know. Over the years, because when I worked at the newspaper and had my column, which was just advice about this and that and other things, but also because I was on the kind of sub-editor side rather than the reporter side, after the Thursday night swims, I could go home, write a story, and then get into work at 6 a.m, put it on the page so I would know it was going to be there. One of the things that I've liked about that particular aspect is seeing these young people come up. You get this 11 or 12-year-old. Well, there's always a couple that look promising. And then by the time they're 13 or 14, one or two will really stand out. And there have been some fabulous young swimmers come through the ranks over the years. There's been 2 males and 2 females that have won the Banana Boat Series in the last 7 or 8 years. And recently, of course, Alex Dunkley's dominated that. And I've always enjoyed, because nowadays, well, up until now, I've written for Sports Hub and interviewed Alex pretty well after every swim. There hasn't been a single dominant female swimmer since Abby Smale, who, of course, was a Nelson swimmer. She's gone on and living in Christchurch. Well, she might be going to Dunedin, I think. But anyway, forming those kind of relationships with those young swimmers is quite satisfying. But I've interviewed my good friend Bishop Derek Eaton on many occasions, and it's a kind of privilege to know people like that. And I really admire some of these older swimmers. I've got a very good friend called Ben Van Dyke. Ben's not as old as me. He's only a youngster of 64 or something. But when he was 60, Ben went to Sweden for the World, age group swim championships. I don't know what it was, but he won 3 gold medals in 100 meters and 200 meters butterfly and freestyle. And then he did a 3-kilometer lake swim, which he was leading, but he's as skinny as a rake, Ben, and the cold got to him because it was pretty cold in a Swedish lake. So only got a bronze medal in the world. But it's That's just amazing. Fabulous that we've got people like that. I mean, Ben, at his age, in a swim of 150 people here in Nelson, will still be in the top 10,
That's amazing.
It is. It's just...
So, like him, for example, did he swim as a teenager, or did he pick it up later in life?
I think he's from San Francisco area, I think, Ben. He's lived here probably for 50 years, but I think he swam from a young age. I don't know his background too much. Yeah. I've got another friend, Ralph Hetzel, who's 82 now. Ralph was a kind of lifeguard at Huntington Beach down in California, and he came to New Zealand, and I've known him since about 1975. So that's quite a long time now, isn't it? It's 50 years. It's hard to believe. Anyway, Ralph is still swimming. I mean, I love the young people coming through, but I really, I've got a lot of time for my old friends, really. They're so motivational, because I'm not a very good swimmer, but some of our friends are fabulous swimmers. I just wish I was like them.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah, me too.
I was just wondering, you've probably managed to swim in a lot of places around the world, and you live in a wonderful part. Do you have any particular favorite locations or things like that, or memorable places that you've swum?
Yeah, I love swimming at Tahuna Beach. It's like a gigantic swimming pool, and we feel so much at ease there. There are fixed points like Fifeshire Rock, and there's rows of buoys. There's lots of nice things. I love that. There's always, you can just go out on your own, swim to any buoy, and suddenly you'll be surrounded by swimmers. They're everywhere. I love swimming at our batch in the Sounds, off the jetty. We walk down the jetty at Tiramoana, which is the Tiramoana jetty is about 700 metres away from the Anakiwa jetty. And you can walk down our jetty, the Tiramoana one, and there'd be stingray prowling around the jetty. So you have to jump in and splash a lot because, anyway, they're not very scary. But, I love swimming there. Unusual places I've swum in. I've been to a lot of this sounds like showing off. I've been to 9 World Championships of triathlon in my youth, and well, in my 60s basically. It was really interesting.
Yeah, that's use. I'll go with that.
Yeah. In Manchester, which was further back, 93, we swam in the city reservoir up in the Fell district. That was interesting.
Wow.
In Budapest, we swam in a little bay off the Danube. And man, I was freezing. I was going to swim non-wetsuit because we were traveling a lot afterwards, and I didn't want to have so much baggage. So I got there and it was only 13 degrees and it was wetsuit compulsory. So I had to borrow one and it was too tight. I couldn't breathe. Oh my God. That was memorable because I went off like a bat out of hell, of course, and just completely lost my breath. Yeah, that was a lesson, I suppose. Yeah. I quite like swimming in up in the Abel Tasman, but as an adjunct to those swims of the length of the park and a consolation prize for others, we, for several years, did a free swim from Marahau to Kaiteri of 5 kilometres. And that's always been, well, I mean, people love a free swim. And that's a really nice swim to do because, you know, it's kind of point to point and you cross past lots of scenic landmarks. I don't know if you know of Split Apple Rock, which is a bit of a landmark in that area. We stopped there for a photo shoot. So these swims are not races. They're just swims, come along, have a swim. And yeah, people love it.
Cool. So, Peter, as I, so I've just turned 50. I feel like I'm embarrassed to sort of talk as if I'm old when I'm hanging out with you guys and making me feel really bad. But anyway, I've noticed for myself in the last couple of years that where I could go out into the ocean, for example, and my preference was always to wear a darker sort of tinted goggle. And I find that because my eyesight's not quite what it used to be, I prefer wearing a clear lens as an example.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And with that said, just the conversation I'm going on, there's a couple of guys in our swim squad, and I won't mention any names, but a lot of them really struggle in their 70s, and they will sort of weave from the one side of the bay to the other, just because, you know, eyesight-wise, it's not quite what it used to be, right?
Yeah.
Do you find, like, have you got any issues as you've got older with your eyes and visibility while you're swimming, be it different color lenses or the sun, or, you know, what advice can you give me as I'm getting older?
I don't suffer any more now than I did when I was younger. I've always been reluctant to pick up my head and look where I'm going because it's much more comfortable to keep your head down.
Okay.
I've always preferred to have clear lenses in my goggles. Yeah, it wasn't until, in fact, I always had clear lenses. I went up to do, I don't know if you remember the King of the Bays, the Banana Boat King of the Bays swim, when they changed it from a Milford start to a narrow neck start. And that was only 4 years or 5 years ago. I got to the start line, or to the start venue, and I didn't have my goggles. And so I had to go across to Blimmin Dan Feist and say, I need a pair of goggles. And he didn't have any clear ones. So he gave me some with blue lenses, and I really liked them, actually. I lost them eventually, and I never bought another pair, but that was quite nice. But, yeah, on the whole, I think I prefer clear lenses, especially on cloudy days. Yeah.
Okay. And in the, I don't know, 40 odd years of swimming, what is your preference wetsuit wise?
Oh, well, I don't have a special preference. My first good wetsuit was a Zone 3. In fact, my friend Ben Van Dyke, who I was just talking about, decided he was going to import some, one for his daughter, one for his daughter's coach, one for him, and one for me, which he gave me. I can't believe that's generous offer, and I've still got that wetsuit. It must be 12 years old now. So I've worked my way through a series of Zone 3 wetsuits. But they've started to get so goddamn expensive. I looked to replace my current one a couple of seasons ago, and it was going to be a small fortune, like nearly $1,000. And then I found Torpedo 7 selling off these Orca, can't remember what they're called, athletes. So anyway, I bought one of these Orcas for something like $300, and I find it's pretty good. You know, I'm not good enough for, you know, I only win medals in those races if everybody else stays away. And when you get, you know, into my age group, there are not that many people to start with. So, you know, it's funny. Last summer just gone in the Rangitoto swim, Nelson swimmers completely dominated the 75 to 79 age group. There were only two of us, and my mate Stuart finished 20 minutes ahead of me. So whatever wetsuit I wear isn't going to make a blind bit of difference to how I do. So I don't have a lot of preference. As long as it's a, you know, decent wetsuit, it's probably all right for me.
Nice.
Yeah. That's actually my plan for winning my age group. Is I'm just going to stick around and keep on doing it. But every time I move into the next age group, the same guys who beat me last time around are still there. So my strategy's not working.
It happens to me all the time. I can never quite break through into that medal winning area. But anyway, what the hell? I tell myself I'm not in it for the competition, but you know, you can't. There's something glorious about winning a medal, even if you only got it because everybody else stayed away. You know,
I've got a couple like that. You know, first guy across without a wetsuit. Oh, the only guy across without a wetsuit. Yeah,
right. First out of one. As people console you with, you know, you had to be there. Just think of the hundreds of people who are not there, growing fat and drinking beer. Yep.
It reminds me of a story you used to tell me. Up here in Auckland, there was a guy that used to enter the Ocean Swim Series with his dog.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
And the guys, the sort of big challenge for your sort of back markers was to beat the dog.
Beat the dog. Rosie the dog, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that dog doing the cross-harbour swim. Yeah.
Did you beat her?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I'm
okay, nice. There you go. Have you seen the sport of open water swimming change like over the last 10, 20 years?
Yeah.
Is it in a good space at the moment, you think?
Especially in the last maybe 6-7 years, it seems to just exploded somehow. And the interesting thing is, to me anyway, like in Nelson, let me think, about 12 years ago, we were getting something like 170 people competing on a Thursday night. Nowadays, we only get about 120. And that's because so many people, there are a lot of far more swimmers, far more dedicated swimmers, but they can't be bothered with competition. You know, they say, well, we just swim. And why should we pay to swim? We can swim for nothing. And,
sure.
You know, it's all those people, as far as our local series go, all those people paddle the kayaks and, you know, provide backup. But they don't race necessarily. So competition, for organisers, I think it's getting tougher, probably, even though I'm on the fringes now. But yeah, people just want to swim, and that's expanded hugely, particularly the all year round crew, which is much bigger than it used to be.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, the all year round crew is getting bigger. Okay, Peter, thanks so much for your time. I think it's we should wrap this up. We've taken some of your valuable weekend time, even if every day is a weekend for some of us. So just really like to say thank you for sharing your story with us.
That's fine, and send me a link so I can figure out where to get it, and I'll look forward to hearing it.
I will absolutely do that, Peter. Thank you so much for the time, and have an awesome weekend.
Thank you. Thank you for everything. Bye.
Hi, my name is Caitlin O'Reilly. I'm the youngest person to have completed the Ocean 7 Challenge. If this really cool podcast has helped you learn something new, maybe it's introduced you to new swimmers, made you smile, then please take the opportunity to subscribe to Duncan and Jim's channel. I'm sure they would absolutely appreciate all your support. Cheers.
Thanks, Caitlin. Well, as always, you can give us feedback on our Instagram account @cleverdix, or send us an email, cleverdixnz@gmail.com. We'd really appreciate hearing from you. And cheers. We'll speak to you again soon.